Greetings everyone, Malazetic here, and today I would like to talk about New World Drop Chances, also known as RNG or luck. A copy of all the information in this video can also be found at my website newworldpacifist.com underneath the Resources RNG Explained section if you don't want to watch the YouTube video. Let's dive in now, shall we? New World is set up to use loot tables similar to Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons is set up to use 100-sided dice for their loot tables. The Game Master will roll a D100 and look it up on the loot table to see what an adventurer earns. In some cases, the loot table will point to another loot table for more treasure, such as magical items, and in other cases, the loot table will point to no loot and the adventurers are awarded nothing. There are many loot tables to select from in Dungeons & Dragons, and it is up to the Game Master to roll on the proper loot table based on what happened in the game. For example, if an adventurer encounters a challenge rating of 5, then the GM should roll on the table that is on par with a challenge rating 5 or less. Shifting gears from Dungeons & Dragons back to New World, the closed beta was set up with 634 different loot tables. Now, think for a second all the objects, monsters, chests, harvesting nodes that you can obtain loot from in New World. That's quite a bit. Each one of those entities is also tied to a loot table in some way or another. If it wasn't tied to a loot table, it wouldn't drop any loot. Even the super special named monsters that had very specific loot had their own loot table. Let's go ahead and dive into a loot table that the closed beta have. Here, you can see many different loot tables for mining different kind of ore veins. You can see that iron nodes are broken up into small, medium, and large veins, like we experienced in closed beta, and based upon those, each one has their amount of yield, small being 11 to 17, medium 18 to 30, large 31 to 48. Let's dig in a little bit further and look at the ore vein finish medium loot table for our example here. You can see that the max roll is set for 100,000 and the loot table type is set as logical and. The first item listed for this loot table is iron ore with a required roll of 0. The second item is small quartz crystal, required roll 91,000. The third item is LTID gems tier 1 requiring a 96,000. And then the fourth item is the LTID mining resources requiring 101,000 roll in order to access. Now, you may have already realized this, but the max roll was 100,000, meaning the 101,000 roll is not possible for the fourth item in this table. That's where the bonus roll comes into play, and I'll talk more about that later in the video, but for now, let's just assume our bonus roll is 500 for this example. So the way this works is because this is a logical and loot table. The dice is rolled each time for item 1, item 2, item 3, and item 4. Item 1's roll doesn't actually matter because the value is set to 0, which means it's guaranteed to be given to you. That's why you always get iron ore when you harvest from an iron vein. Now, let's assume the game rolls a 98,000 for item 2, a 99,000 for item 3, and a 5,000 for item 4. For item 2, the small quartz crystal, this doesn't guarantee that you actually get a small quartz crystal because the range is between 0 and 1. It just means you have a chance of gaining the small quartz crystal, because at this point it's now a 50-50 chance of you getting it or not. You roll a two-sided dice, more or less flip a coin, heads or tails. Heads you get it, tails you don't. So that's why you don't always get a small quartz crystal if you roll above a 91,000. Now, for the third item, we did successfully roll high enough for it. It is a loot table ID gems tier 1, and because the range is 1 to 2, that means we are rolling on the loot table once or twice. The chance of that is, once again, 50-50 as there are only two options, 1 or 2. Now let's move over to the gems tier 1 loot table, as this is where it's currently taking us now. And here you can see that the gems tier 1 loot table type is a logical OR loot table, not an AND. That means we're only allowed to take one item out of this loot table. Now if you take a look at all the items, we've got 15 different items to select from, all with the same chance at 0, meaning we just roll a 1 to 15, and depending on what we roll is what we get. 1 being item 1, 6 being item 6, 15 being item 15. And if for some reason it does roll item 15, that means we go to the Gems Tier 2 table. And the same thing happens here. If we get item 15, we go to Tier 3. Tier 3, 15, Tier 4. And from here, we have the possibility of getting a Tier 4 gem while mining iron ore. I want to take a step back now and talk a little bit about the table types, the logical and the logical or, and explain why I know it works that way. It's very similar to a programmer's logical and logical or, which is kind of why I call them that way. If you do a Google search for logical and logical or, it will fully explain to you how those work. But I did a lot of comparison to these loot tables to what I got from playing the closed beta to verify that it works that way. And that's why I know for the logical and tables, it will roll a dice each time for an item 1, an item 2, item 3, so on and so forth. And then it only rolls the dice once for an OR table because you can only extract one item out of that. Let's go ahead and start talking about bonus rolls, the way you'd want to increase the chances of you obtaining an item you want. To start off, there are 17 trade skills in New World. Of those 17 trade skills, 10 of them really benefit from this bonus roll, and that's the refining and gathering. The refining and gathering both have ways to increase your luck specific to their trade skill. For example, harvesting luck will increase your luck towards harvesting. In addition to this, every time you level up your trade skill, you get 10 bonus roll points towards that trade skill. For example, a level 10 miner will have 100 bonus roll points in mining. I'm going to go ahead and just post on the screen everything you can get to increase your bonus roll in a related trade skill. Now, if you're not sure why it's important to have a bonus roll in your refining trade skill, it's because it increases the chance of you yielding more of the material. For example, if you wanted to smelt iron ore into iron ingots, a higher bonus luck will increase the chances of you getting more iron ingots. That only works for the refining trade skills, and the reason I explicitly state that is because in other games such as Diablo 3 that have magic find, a higher magic find increases the yield that you can get from items, and that's just not how it works in New World. A higher luck in New World just increases the chance of you getting an item, not the yield. And that's why there are perks for yield, such as harvesting yield. Increase the yield of resources while gathering the related trade skill. I would like to address the most common question that I've seen, and that is, what's the difference between a % luck bonus and a point luck bonus towards a trade skill? Now, when it comes to this, the general rule of thumb is 1% is about 1,000 points. This isn't always 100% accurate, but a majority of the time it is. The way it works is that a % bonus is going to give you a % chance towards the roll. So if you've got a 10% chance, regardless of what the max roll is, you're always going to get a 10% chance. The point value, however, is more of a dynamic chance, and it changes based off of what you're rolling against. So if I get a 1,000 point bonus towards my harvesting luck, it will always be 1,000 points that I get. Meaning if you roll on a 100,000 loot table, it's a 1% chance. But if you're rolling on a 10,000 max roll loot table, then it's a 10% chance increase for you. So the % chance is a little bit more dynamic for the point system and a lot more beneficial. I'm going to go ahead and post on the screen some resource thresholds so you can kind of see what requirements you need in order to start getting things such as Fey Iron. I do want to make note that this is only from gathering nodes and not from provision containers and such. I guarantee it's easier for you to try and get some of these resources out of those crates than it would be from a gathering node. I'll have an exact breakdown of that on my website in the near future, as it's a pain in my arse to do. The final thing I would like to talk to you about for the loot tables are conditionals. Conditionals are rather straightforward. They are the conditions required in order for you to roll on a loot table. For example, you will need to be fishing in saltwater if you want to roll on the saltwater loot table. New World Fans does a great job with conditionals, so if you want to use their website and see what has a chance to drop something, that is an excellent source for conditionals and to kind of get an idea of where you need to go to get stuff to drop for you. That's kind of the last thing that you needed to know to get a basic idea of how loot tables work in New World. I didn't talk about everything there is about loot tables, however. There are things such as True Luck, which is believed to prevent bonus roll values to be added to your rolls, but not guaranteed. That is still currently in theory testing. And then we also have a global modifier conditional that is set by Amazon server side, so it's a little bit of a gray area and we're still trying to figure out exactly what it does. And that's that. Let me know what you think in the comments below, or if you have any suggestions or ideas. I appreciate the feedback that everyone has when it comes to making content. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and thanks for tuning in.